What's going on, guys? Hope you are all are doing well or woke up well. The Congress session is about to start. We're just going to find out exactly what they're talking about, what flow proceedings they're going to talk about today. I try to fix my the way my rig is set up early. I don't know if it's good. So if you're watching this live, let me know if the rig is a lot better. All right, I would greatly appreciate that. All right, so it's about to start. So there should be some prayer.
This week, the Senate will pass the 60th Annual National Defense Authorization Act. Every year, this legislation lets the Senate make our top priorities on protecting our homeland, our allies, and our global interests into law. And certainly, the recent behavior of our adversaries the world over shows why this task is as urgent as ever. Even as our nation focused on fighting the pandemic at home, our service members have contended with dangerous behavior from would-be competitors all around the world. The Russian military has kept probing the bounds of U.S. airspace, and Putin's regime has kept its sights on cyber war and destabilization by proxy. China continues to treat international commercial lanes like its own private pond, choke freedom and autonomy out of Hong Kong, and try to ethnically cleanse Xinjiang. Both countries continue to modernize their military capabilities from sea to space. And Iranian meddling, North Korean saber rattling, and the persistent violence of terrorist groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda demand our attention as well. Amid these threats and many others, the American people and the entire free world look to the men and women of the U.S. military to preserve order and peace. And the opening bipartisan process led by Chairman Inhofe and Ranking Member Reid has produced strong legislation that will advance their missions. It's the product of intense committee work. It contains more than 200 bipartisan amendments, and it builds on the historic progress which this administration and this Republican Senate have secured over the past 3 years. After years of cuts to our military that weakened readiness and imperiled modernization and called into question our commitment to preserving our global interests, we have reversed the tide. We've invested in strength, we've built a new national defense strategy, and are investing in rebuilding and modernizing our military to help achieve it. This legislation will carry the progress even further. More support for defense research and innovation, resources for housing and healthcare, tools to deepen our commitments with regional partners in Europe and the Pacific. For most Americans, investing in the greatest fighting force in the world is not controversial. It's a no-brainer. But lest we forget, Madam President, the radical energy on the far left is sparking some truly extraordinary behavior among our Democratic colleagues. Case in point, later today we'll vote on an amendment that was advertised in an opinion essay by the junior senator from Vermont titled Defund the Pentagon, the Liberal Case. The junior senator from Vermont, an essay entitled
Sounds like he don't want to talk about the stimulus bill, guys.
The Liberal Case.
He'll get to it. He'll say something about the stimulus bill.
We've moved on from defunding local police to defunding the United States Armed Forces. Maybe we'll be sending social workers on overseas deployments when they aren't too busy responding to violent crimes. I'm not sure. Senator Sanders' amendment would literally decimate the defense budget. It would rip 10% of it right out and pour the money into all the usual socialist fantasies. Free rent, free college, free everything, for everyone. Now, in light of the long-held views of our colleagues from Vermont, a proposal like this may not be particularly shocking. What is remarkable is that the Democratic leader, the leader of their caucus, felt pressured into endorsing it. Let me say that again. The Democratic leader, who in almost every floor speech tries to accuse this administration of being too soft on America's adversaries, wants to literally decimate our defense budget to finance a socialist spending spree. This turns out to be something of a pattern. On the Democratic side, it sometimes seems like we have hawks when it comes to speeches, but chickens when it comes time to make policy. When they're on the sidelines, there's plenty of bark. But whenever they actually call a shot, there's zero bite. Lots of bark, little bite, all hat, no cattle. That's how we end up with spectacles like the Democratic leader playing as a Russian hawk when about a decade ago he was publicly arguing that we should go up to Putin, send billions of dollars in cash, pull the plug on NATO missile defense pacts that hurt Putin's feelings, and concede to him, quote, Russia's traditional role in the Caspian Sea region. That was the Democratic leader in 2008. Pay off Putin, let him have his sphere of influence. And now today, he wants to decimate defense spending. But in between, he spent years insisting that Democrats want to get tough on foreign policy. So you see how the game works, Madam President. Sound like hawks on television, act like chickens when making policy. Defense spending demonstrates our will to defend ourselves and our interests in a dangerous world. Keeping our nation safe is our foremost constitutional duty. We cannot shirk it. My colleagues who profess concern over Putin's efforts to interfere in our politics, or Xi's efforts to rewrite the rules of the international system, must know that we will never be able to deter such behavior if we sell out our own soldiers short and surrender our technological edge. So I assure you, Beijing and Moscow will be watching this vote. I ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to reject this far-left fantasy, defeat this amendment. Throughout the Cold War, we maintained a bipartisan commitment to American strength, American alliances, and global peace built on American values. We will reinforce that stand when we sink the reckless Sanders-Schumer amendment, and again when we pass this bipartisan bill. Now, Madam President, on a final matter, since the spring, our nation has engaged in important conversation about racial justice in policing.
He's not going to talk about the stimulus bill, guys.
Our nation's tremendous progress toward justice does not mean battling against American principles or American history. Progress means fulfilling our values, not attacking them. And yet, a group of radicals have latched onto this moment to say we should repudiate our country itself. We watch as mobs have dragged statues of Washington, Jefferson, and Grant through the dirt. And in parallel, inside many elite institutions, self-styled intellectuals say we should similarly discard the basic principles that they fought for. One of the key pillars of our nation is the rule of law. In a civilized society, the same laws need to apply to everyone. At times our nation has fallen short on this score, particularly for all the years when Black Americans were completely denied the equal protections of law. It has been to our great shame. This has been central to the cause of civil rights. There's a reason the 14th Amendment insists on equal protection of the law. And yet, in recent months, local leaders have violated this basic tenet. As riots rocked major cities, we saw politicians decline to act. They seem to fear far-left critique more than looting and chaos. And we saw the uneven application of other rules, like when mayors cheered on mass demonstrations but continued to prohibit religious gatherings. That is the rule of law in jeopardy. Of course, the last example is also a First Amendment issue, and the freedom of expression itself is another principle that's come under threat. As I said a few weeks back, this goes deeper than just constitutional law. America has always prized the spirit of the First Amendment. We citizens must want to protect an open civil discourse, a true marketplace of ideas. But lately, the political left has embraced something totally different. Today's far left is not interested in winning debates with better arguments. They prefer to shut down debate altogether. They don't try to win the contest. They just harangue the referees to stop the game. If they don't like an op-ed, they want it unpublished. If they don't like a tweet, they want to track down the author and get them fired. If they don't like a tenured professor, they throw around Orwellian accusations that his or her ideas make them feel unsafe. This hostile culture is getting results. According to one brand new survey, it is only far-left Americans who do not feel compelled to self-censor their views because of a hostile climate. Everyone but the left feels the threat. And 50% of self-identified strong liberals say that simply contributing to the Republican presidential candidate ought to be a fireable offense for a business leader. Let me say that again. 50% of self-identified strong liberals say that simply contributing to the Republican presidential candidate ought to be a fireable offense for a business leader. In this country, we recently saw the New York Times apologize for publishing a straightforward policy argument from a U.S. senator. Since an editorial staffer resigned from the paper because even center-left opinions were not liberal enough and led to her constant harassment. That was a recent editorial staffer resigning from the New York Times because her center-left opinions were not liberal enough and led to her constant harassment.
What does the New York Times have to do with stimulus bill?
Cases only go in one direction. On elite campuses, such as Princeton, we see faculty turning on their tenured colleagues and even administrators weighing in to chastise people with unpopular views. At Princeton, we see online platforms such as Facebook threatening to ban political advertising altogether, showing our democracy because far-left employees and outside pressure groups berate them for letting diverse speakers use their platform. Even at a time when there is significant appetite in Congress to take a second look at the legal protections afforded to those supposedly neutral platforms, they still contemplate giving an angry minority of agitators a veto over America's political speech. The author, Salman Rushdie, who was himself threatened with death for controversial speech, once said this: "Two things form the bedrock of any open society: freedom of expression and the rule of law. If you don't have those things, you don't have a free country. Free expression and the rule of law. Exactly the two things we've seen eroded in recent months. Rushdie recently signed an open letter with other intellectuals, many liberals, sounding the alarm on this cultural poison. Editors are fired, they wrote. Books are withdrawn. Journalists are barred from writing on certain topics. Professors are investigated, steadily narrowing the boundaries of what can be said without the threat of reprisal. Well, you can guess what happened next. The grievance industrial complex came after the letter itself. The authors were accused of advancing bigotry. And the cycle of nonsense started all over again. The United States of America needs free speech. We need free expression.
We need stimulus. We need a stimulus.
From all perspectives,
We need a stimulus.
need the courage to speak up and defend.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate Majority Leader has spoken. This is the guy that pretty much sets the schedule for the day, what they're going to be talking about. He's spoken. He did not speak one lick of the stimulus bill. So that just lets you know how he feels. Granted, they're working on it, but that's something that needs to be discussed every single day, guys. And this is what we got today from him. Let's see what we get from Chuck Schumer. Okay? Who is this person talking?
Madam President.
Here we go. Here we go.
Democratic senators returned to Washington on Monday, prepared to work in a bipartisan way on the next phase of coronavirus relief. After stalling for months while COVID-19 surged in more than 40 states, Senate Republicans finally said that now, the end of July, more than 3 months after the CARES bill passed, would be the time for another emergency bill. But here we are. It's in the middle of the week, and the Republican Party is so disorganized, chaotic, and unprepared that they can barely cobble together a partisan bill in their own conference. Indicative was Leader McConnell's speech. He rants and raves about the New York Times and cancel culture. Not a word about COVID-19. People are ready to lose their unemployment benefits, to lose their apartments, and be evicted. Local governments are laying off people because they don't have the dollars. We're in a national crisis. We don't hear a word out of Leader McConnell as we're on the edge of so many cliffs. Instead, lots of talk about the New York Times and cancel culture. That may be fodder for the far right. That is not what America needs. When Leader McConnell at this crucial moment can't even mention COVID, it shows what a knot the Republicans are tied in. Bottom line is this. The White House Chief of Staff said Republicans were on their own 20-yard line when it comes to their legislative proposal. Their own 20-yard line, 2 months and a week after we passed the COVID-3 bill, after millions more Americans applied for unemployment, after many small businesses went under and many more died and were hospitalized as COVID rages in many southern states. We're still on the 20-yard line. Where have the Republicans been? I've never seen the political party in crisis so tied in a knot that the majority leader can't even mention it in his speech and spends time ranting against favorite targets of the far right. Can't come up with a proposal. This isn't a game. This isn't typical Republican dysfunction about whether or not they didn't or did see the president's last tweet. The disarray on the Republican side has real consequence. Americans will suffer unnecessary pain and uncertainty because of it. The only reason there hasn't been another relief package in Congress already is because of this Republican incompetence and reckless delay. Even after all these months, the White House and Senate Republicans are starkly divided about what to do. The White House is insisting on policies like a payroll tax cut that would do nothing to help millions of unemployed Americans and that many Senate Republicans don't even support. Republicans even seem to agree on whether to provide any new aid for state and local governments, or the states should be able to more flexibly use the support we've already given. A few of my friends on the other side of the aisle hardly want to spend any more money to help our country in this once-in-a-generation crisis, because it might add to the national debt. Giant corporate tax cuts, $1.5 to $2 trillion of them, that's okay. Fighting the greatest public health crisis in a century and forestalling a depression, that's a bridge too far. Where are the priorities on the other side of the aisle? Well, I guess they're for helping big corporate fat cats, wealthy people, but not average people who are hurting. That's the trouble with the Republican Party. Seriously, there are only 3 weeks left until the August work period, and Republicans are still in the opening phases of preparing their bill. We don't have time for this mess that the Republicans are in. The moratorium on evictions we passed in the CARES Act expires in 2 days. The Wall Street Journal reports that nearly 12 million adults live in households that missed their last rent payment, and 23 million have little or no confidence in their ability to make the next one. Next week, the enhanced unemployment benefits we passed in the CARES Act will expire, while 20 to 30 million Americans are still without work. A recent study showed that those enhanced benefits prevented nearly 12 million Americans from slipping into poverty. 12 million. And because Republicans can't get their act together, those benefits might expire next week. Congress needs to act quickly. Senate Republicans in the White House need to get on the same page, produce a proposal, not just drop it on the floor, but start negotiations. Or better yet, we could start negotiations on the HEROES Act, which already passed the House, and unlike the developing Republican proposal, would actually match the scale of this crisis. Now, yesterday, Speaker Pelosi and I met with Chief of Staff Meadows and Secretary Mnuchin. Even with all this chaos, we've had some indications about what the Republicans are trying to do in their bill. Over the weekend, we heard that the administration was trying to block additional funding for coronavirus testing and contact tracing. President Trump has also ended the CDC's data collection efforts, potentially risking access to data that public health experts so vitally need. So when we met with Chief of Staff Meadows and Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi and I told them to back off these counterproductive and dangerous ideas. In addition, we'll be sending a letter to the administration to demand answers on how data is being reported to the White House, as well as pushing for legislation in the upcoming bill to ensure that COVID-19 data is fully transparent and accessible without any interference from the administration. We know Donald Trump likes to hide the truth. He thinks when the truth doesn't come forward, he thinks when he muzzles government officials, that it changes things. It doesn't. The virus still rages and will rage unless we do something about it, not simply hide the statistics that show its depth and mendacity. And we will make sure that those statistics are made public, so all of America, including the president, will know how bad the situation is, because that's what we need, the truth, to set us free, and then to act on it. Let me repeat, if the administration refuses to reverse course, Democrats will insist on data transparency in the next COVID relief bill. All of our efforts to bolster the economy, help the unemployed, save small businesses, and ensure our children are safe at school will be meaningless if we don't stop the spread of the virus. Hiding COVID data from the CDC and foot dragging on more testing and tracing is absolutely incomprehensible and imperils everything else we're working on. So we need to make a law. We need to make it soon. But right now, the infighting and partisanship on the Republican side and cockamamie ideas like hiding data from the CDC are only adding to the delay. Now, yesterday, we also saw the return of President Trump's coronavirus press briefings. It's remarkable that President Trump has lowered the bar so much that his performance yesterday was seen as a change in tone. It's a very sad state of affairs in our country when one day of the president reading statistics is hailed as leadership, and that's what he should have been doing all along. The mere acknowledgement by the president that COVID-19 is raging through our country is some kind of breakthrough. Is that what people believe? Is that what Trump wants the people to believe? It's crazy. The truth is, every time the president takes the podium, he is a risk to public health. 6 months into the coronavirus, and the president has only just come around to the idea that wearing masks would be a good idea. He deserves criticism for that belated admission, not praise. 6 months into the crisis, and President said yesterday his administration is in the process of developing a strategy that's going to be very, very powerful. 6 months in, countries in Europe and East Asia developed national testing regimes ages ago, and that's why they're way ahead of us in fighting this crisis. Americans must be hanging their heads in shame and disbelief that this administration is still trying to sort out the basics. And when he says he's going to try to sort out the basics, months and months too late, as the crisis has raged, people think he should get praised? No. He should be criticized, because he hasn't done what he's supposed to be doing for months. President Trump started his press conference by labeling COVID-19 the China virus, which shows the president's still trying to deflect blame, play political games with this deadly serious virus. Games that are divisive. The truth is, more than anything or anybody else, the responsibility for America's failure to deal competently with COVID-19 falls squarely on President Trump's shoulders. It is long past time for the president to start acting like it. I yield the floor.
You know, these are the things you got to go through. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'm on the way, and I see you guys in the next video. Blessings. Yo!